course, the judiciary, we can see Parliament is tagged as well there. We have also the Attorney General in between. He's been a bit mealy-mouthed on what is happening so far, we wonder. And the Deputy President as well. Cloud banks of dark cloud also hanging over that. We can see also this is in light of some of the latest development that the courts have quashed or given intervention on. You have the UHC housing levy, Haiti development or deployment, I should say, parastatal SAL. The highways seem to be, of course, also not very, very smooth for the KK administration right now. You can see also this car is clamped, and this is what the judiciary has actually done. Look at the clamp there. It has been halted by the courts, and so we have the executive taking special umbrage with some of the cases in court. As you can see, he is hard at work. He's climbed there on the ladder. And the scale of justice is at stake. Judiciary, the soul now is going to and fro, trying to cut that particular scale of justice. I'm not backing down, and you've seen him, he's not really rowing back. He's been very, very adamant and still on it, saying there are culprits within the judiciary. I just showed you that there are 10 judges right now who are in the crosshairs of the executive. And in light of this, this is all about Jenga. And if you know about Jenga, that particular play that internationally now is known as Jenga, every block right now really seems to be holding this particular Jenga. As you can see, the housing levy, the courts are pulling out of it. We have Mombasa, Lamu ports, we have SHIF as well. And so it could be crumbling down. Or could it? That's the question. And right now we have the East African judges vilifying State House for attacks. Also, the East African Voice is lending also their verdict on this, or the opinion. The East African judges and magistrates, EMJA, have called out on President William Ruto over his recent remarks on the Kenyan judiciary, terming them a threat to judicial independence and the rule of law. In a press statement, the judges and the magistrate based in Arusha, Tanzania, noted that Ruto's remarks are unfortunate and are aimed at ridiculing and painting the judiciary negatively, hence interfering with the judicial independence. It says, quote unquote, the East African Magistrates and Judges Association expresses deep concern over a recent statement made by the President of Kenya, which have raised serious questions about the interference with the independence of the judiciary. EMJA emphasizes the crucial role of an independent judiciary in upholding the rule of law and promoting a democratic state. Justice Ketirima John Eudish, the president of East African Court, says, I will show you the picture, upheld the election. The association president, Judge Eudish, has urged the head of state to respect the independence of the judiciary at all times. And he says, continues to say that EMJA wishes to remind Kenyan government of its commitment to various regional, continental, and international instruments that underscore the importance of preserving the independence of the judiciary, he states. EMJA expressed disappointment that Ruto was resorting to general criticism instead of presenting evidence of corruption within the judiciary. The judges and magistrates have urged the president to stop undermining the judiciary, and if he has any issues with the institution, he should raise the same through proper channels. EMJ underscores the significance of addressing any grievances against judicial officers or the decision within the acceptable framework that enhances the rule of law and independence of the judiciary. It's imperative that any concerns or disputes be handled through established legal channels, respecting the principles of due process and separation of powers, reads the statement, and this is the gentleman. I come to you, Dr. Martin Olo. As I was saying earlier, so we have good material, maybe also for a thesis, as far as this development is concerned.
There are two issues here at play. There's the political science at play and there's law at play. And perhaps the West African proverb that reminds us that when you see a man whose house is burning, going after a rat that is coming from the house, then you know there's a problem. So that your house is burning, but you are busy blaming the rat for all the problems of the past, when what you should be doing is saving the house. So in political science, what we are seeing coming from William Ruto is the very specimen of the making of a dictator. Manipulation and deception. What he's doing, he's preparing himself for totalitarian rule by subjugating other arms of government, attacking the judiciary, emasculating the legislature, heightening his own role and office as at State House, not even the cabinet secretaries, because the cabinet secretaries, who are supposed to be a very big component of the executive, and the principal secretaries, are not as powerful or as empowered as they should be. So what President Ruto is doing in terms of Machiavelli is employing deception and manipulation. So deception is that you make people see, because they cannot feel, you make them see that actually there is corruption in the judiciary. Not in your executive, not in your office, in the judiciary. So you point them there. But you also manipulate them to believe that you have what it takes to eliminate corruption. So two things, you're using deception. The second one, you're manipulating. But at the same time, what you're doing, you're whipping up emotions, you're whipping up masses, and you're telling them things that they want to hear, and you want to suggest that whatever you want to fight is for their good, which again totally is untrue. There is something that if you are a follower of William Ruto, the politician, see what he says about the same thing today and what he does the following day. His inability to keep to a text is a problem. He was a major advocate for entrenchment of CDF. He is not interested in CDF now because he knows once MPs have money and they're able to do their programs, they're not listening to him. So you create a situation where you starve them of this, so they keep making noise, and then you keep on seeing how you can then come in and do something, and they say, yeah, were it not for the president, we would not have had this. So he's in a game of politics with an eye on 2027, but he'll tell you he's not interested in that. The problem then that we are dealing with here is that he is taking on the Trump attributes. He's disruptive, he's contemptuous, he does not listen. Everybody else is wrong, he's the only one who is right. Now, that kind of approach can only be a scheme towards entrenching totalitarianism in what today is an impossibility, because the Kenya that we have today, with the constitution that we have today, he will struggle. Even Parliament at some point will give him trouble, judiciary will continue to give him trouble, because what he's trying to do with the judiciary will certainly backfire. It does not matter whether you remove 10 or 5 or 15 judges, but the moment you attack the judiciary as an institution, it will still backfire on you, particularly with the movement of civil society and the clarity we have around constitutionalism and the rule of law. So all we are saying is that whatever we are seeing is political, because where is the Attorney General in this whole conversation in this country?
He's been very mealy-mouthed. Yeah.
Yes, which means that nobody's listening to him, not the president. So he's not the chief legal advisor, so to speak. Who is advising the president? He's advising himself. Who is giving him ideas around the economy? It is him, because he has it. It's bottoms up. It is the economic unit he has in the State House. Is he listening to anybody? No. Is he caring that we are overtaxed? No. Why is he not caring? Because he thinks that he has it all together, and wants the kind of money that he's making, including, and let alone you're asking, what's the evidence of corruption? But if you're looking for corruption, what is there when you are going to bring down people's buildings? When you are going to grab the land on which those buildings are in the name of affordable housing? Why would you bring down housing in the name of building affordable housing? What a misnomer, what an oxymoron. That you destroy people's property because you want to build affordable housing. What is the relationship? You can't see it. The land you are grabbing, or the land you are purportedly saying is public land, is county land. What is the conversation that the national government is having with the county governments on that land? You go to Kakamega, bring down buildings. You go to Ruiru, you bring down buildings everywhere. What is this other than what you're saying, what you're asking? What's the evidence of corruption? It is exactly subverting the status quo for what is unknown.
Right, but he says, stern measures have to be borne with because it's now bearing fruit. Even when it comes to the debts, we're not at the risk that we were when he got into government. So
my friend, where our borrowing is continuing. Every time the shilling is depreciating, our costs are going up. So the measures we are taking are counter. But it's only him who understands, because we don't. And by the way, it's true. We don't know. It's only him who knows.
All right. So also just looking at the statistics, we have it in one of the publications that the VAT on the fuel seems to have dipped also in the first quarter of 2023-2024. This is counterproductive.
Exactly. You see the battle. When you watch the president talk, and I normally make a deliberate attempt to watch news in places where other Kenyans are, and Kenyans today comment as news goes on. The president seems to be talking to himself, even on the few slides that you have shown us. Kenyans are no longer interested. The Kenyans who used to cheer, today sneer at the president whenever they see him on TV. And I hope the National Intelligence Service gives him this information. But as Martin Oloa said, and I think I've said it in this platform, His Excellency, the President, listens only to his own voice. And that's the biggest trouble, because you need to know how people feel to be able to be responsive to their needs, to their concerns. I've always said that, these cut and paste, projects from the Asian tigers, Singapore did it, South Korea did it, Malaysia did it, so we must do it. I mean, if you have money that can only afford a tuk-tuk, and you go to a showroom, and you meet somebody driving a V8, and you force the handful of family members that, we must also buy, this type of vehicle, and you will produce the money. And between you and them, what each one of you can contribute. You can't afford it. So the president is cutting and pasting projects completely oblivious of our circumstances, the economic and social circumstances of our time. Remember, we're just recovering from COVID-19. We have all these, droughts that he himself acknowledges, climate change and all those, and the impact they have had on our earnings as citizens. Yet is, and that's why, the figures we are talking about seem to be reflecting, because if today, you counted the number of, hotels, medium-sized hotels in the city center that have closed down. Green Corner is shut down. Today is stalls.
There's famous Green Corner.
Exactly. It's completely out of the market.
Where Martin used to
all
his meetings every Friday.
Yes, it's
even
closed.
Where it was dating.
And the neighboring hotel, I think it was Nairobi something, and all those, are up for, and they are put up, adverts, suitable for salon and what all kind of stuff. And nobody's interested. Most hotels, medium-sized hotels, have today partitioned their ground floor into stalls, and have taken up restaurants upstairs because they want to create those small shops that people can, afford. Now the president is completely oblivious of that. The president campaigned on a platform that the former president Uhuru Kenyatta had killed the Nyamakima economy. Last week, a building on Charles Rubia Road at the heart of Nyamakima was being auctioned, was on the papers, at the heart of Nyamakima. Now, is it still the former president killing the Nyamakima economy? Did the business people of Nyamakima not collect money and even met him and contributed towards his campaign? Does he talk about Nyamakima economy anymore? Did he not say that the former president had overtaxed, goods on the pretext that they were fake? What is he doing now? Every time I see, tear gas, I see business people running, They are being hounded up and down for not renewing their license in the same area, the Nyamakima economy. So when you want to say, when we are saying that the president is ripe for impeachment, first of all, it is on integrity issues. You cannot lie to people that will put money in their pockets only to spend every waking day taking money out of their pockets. So the president lost it on integrity. The president lost it when he set upon a very vicious breed of police officers on peaceful demonstrators the first half of last year. And people were making, legitimate concerns, raising legitimate concerns, saying, we are unable to feed ourselves. The cost of living is high. The president turned a deaf ear to that. And so when the president continues to dress us down as if we are kids, no Kenyan will take it that. In fact, one of the things I keep on saying is that despite the fact that it took us long to realize a new constitution, the civic, political, and constitutional education that happened in that period has made Kenyans a completely different lot. There are things President William Ruto could successfully do in neighboring countries, but not in this republic that I know of.
Mm-hmm. Right. I just wanted to pick also the brains of Kiprota Rapkiro, because you're a farmer, and I'm looking at the corporate tax, not really the corporate tax, but the crops tax, because we have 5% that should be now the withholding tax, that every bounty harvest that you will be making, you need to be taxed on that. So I'm seeing politicians are coming up also with they're crying foul about this particular tax, and farmers also, they're taking special umbrage with you. What is your assessment? If Nyamakima right now, I think on the ETIMs, now they've realized that, or they cannot even drop in the Mama Mboga and everyone should be on ETIMs, they've scaled down that if your turnover is below 5 million, then you don't have actually to produce your invoice via ITMIS.
The main problem with farming is that people do not understand that farming does not yield a lot of profits. Why do I say that? In any good year, you are likely to experience 16% as profit if you take all the factors into play. Notwithstanding the fact that the vagaries of weather can deplete the 16% almost to zero or even negative. That is a fact that anybody who has done basic agricultural economics would be able to understand. The second issue is that farming has been politicized. I say so because today, Uganda is selling a bag of maize at 4,600 retail, and the normal flow would have been for our maize now to go to Uganda. But the regime of the day has stifled any effort to take maize out of Kenya to Uganda, and yet the cost of production in Uganda is 1/3 the cost of production in Kenya. So where is the logic? You are not allowing the farmer free will within even East Africa community, and yet at the same time you are adding another punitive measure today. And I challenge those in government today. A bag of maize in Trans Nzoia, Wasingishu, Bungoma, parts of Kakamega is retailing at best at about 3,600, while in Uganda is 46. Now, when you take away another 200 shillings, because effectively the 5% will take away 200 shillings, you are now bringing the retail price to 34. And yet in Uganda is 46, which cost of production is 1/3 what we spend here in Kenya. And the other issue, Dibal, that they do not seem to understand, farming is not manufacturing. Manufacturing has almost a predetermined kind of components. You can say, I'm putting so much on the cost of raw material, I'm putting so much on the cost of overheads, so much on electricity and other costs to be able to produce so much, like if you are milling maize, so that you are able to determine if I buy at 4,000 or 5,000, the net retail price of 1 kilo of maize is going to be so much. Farming is not like that because of what I said earlier. The vagaries of weather can wipe any profits that you are likely to gain. But put putting that because, you know, William Ruto knows, even if the rest of the country runs away from him, he knows Kenyans are likely to vote for him again in the next election. So even if he punishes them as hard as possible, eventually they will say he's one of our own. So that vote is almost locked for him. And therefore, it doesn't care what happened in his own backyard. And when he goes there, he tells them stories which have no relevance to the conditions of the ground. But when you look at it, you see, the current president has survived on escapism. He has to look for a way. You know, remember the 411 in 2007. Those of us who are on the side of Kibaki were seen to be the traitors of the community. So they were blaming us, and therefore there was an opponent to fight. Fast forward, after elections, as they formed the Grand Coalition, when he was planning to fight Raila, he said 4,000 youth disappeared from the Kalenjin community. And even when he had to approach more with the regime of the time, he never told us where those boys came, whether they came back, whether they died, or they are still in jail, or wherever they are. Fast forward to 2013, it was the blame against Hague. So he has to look for something to blame. Now, after knowing that he did not need Uhuru again, after election 2017, he blamed everything on Uhuru, culminating in the dynasty versus hustler narrative. Now, when he took over, he realized he needed somebody to blame. He continued blaming Uhuru. Then now, he externalized the issue because now he became a student of international relations. He knew Kenya is not an island. So he said, this is global, and yet within the region, we are not doing as well as we should be doing. Finally now, he has settled on destroying institutions of government. He's going to precipitate anarchy because when you destroy judiciary, you emasculate parliament, and you even destroy your own executive, and you become the sole agent of change because now you are the lawyer of us, or you are advocate of the High Court for the rest of us. I don't know when he went to school of law, whether he did even paralegal education for him to have some basic understanding on the kind of dynamics that are required. I'm increasingly getting worried. And we are breeding a dictator in our midst. If Kenyans were to take us back for those 20 years, William Ruto has been surviving on the guise that there is an opponent of the people. He identifies an opponent, he hammers it, and at the end of the day, people believe the story. And he knows there are enough Kenyans to believe his story. That's my worry.
That's your worry. I think also last year, I remember you saying Kenyans should be wary that in the next 5 years, right? Not even 5 years.
Yes.
It was your perception that in the next 3 to 5 years, we'll be seeing a dictator in this country. That we are seeing that the hallmarks of a dictator is the making of a dictator by then. Which statement I thought also was far-fetched by then. So do you still hold with that particular statement?
I'm even more convinced. I think it was divine intervention that gave me the vision. Because
that you got the revelation.
Tell him, and you're now hearing support from me as well.
And I'm hearing support from a senior lawyer.
So the prophet is being also verified. So you're a true prophet.
True prophet.
Right, but when you talk about leadership, because we read also the president saying that Kenya has lagged behind due to vested interests, this is what he says, incompetent leadership and corruption to fix the challenges in all arms of government. So when the president comes and says we are lagging behind because of incompetent leadership, the buck stops with him, Professor.
Before Prof comes in, I wish Jesus was in town. You would have told William Ruto, throw the first stone.
Jesus is always in town.
Against the corrupt. Throw the first stone against incompetent leadership. Throw the first stone against those who have vested interest. And you will not be able to lift a single stone.
So what you're saying, he who is not corrupt,
Yeah.
may be the first one to pick up the stone and
Yeah.
hurl that.
Yeah.
Right.
But again, it fits within a script, that he's preparing an enemy. The truth is, and we've said it as could
I just give
Prof comes.
before you continue? I know,
Yeah.
but let me just give Professor. I think he's also been mealing out a bit.
Yeah. So, what is leadership? Leadership can be defined with the word followership. And William Ruto is the leader of Kenya, legitimately so. So are people following him? People followed him. I think some people did follow him, and some of them are feeling that he's taking them nowhere. You know, when you are a leader and people are following you, for example, if you start walking and 53 million people are following you, and you don't know where you are taking them, that is a very big challenge, because ask yourself, where is William Ruto taking Kenya? And Kenyans are not idiots, like Churchill said. There's a lot of civic education. Kenyans know which decision you're making. Enough economists, enough lawyers know that this is the wrong decision. After each and every turn, he makes a wrong turn. Anybody who is in Kenya must be, with William Ruto, must be getting stipend from him every day. That's the only person who can follow him. In fact, I would just slightly disagree with the fact that thinking that Kenyans are going to stay with William Ruto. I've been in Eldoret. I'll surprise you how popular I am in Eldoret with people who feel they are completely disfranchised from it. Remember that day when I was in Malindi, when I championed all border to put up a petition by saying that if you use the word border mama mboga to get fame, and I did economic calculation of the goodwill of border mama mboga, which was 426 billion shillings, and I'm in court asking him to pay that goodwill, because in all his documents, even including his presidential standard, hustler is there. And the hustler is gaining nothing, yet it is there in the thing. I remember the hustler thing is not just for Mama Mboga. Even touts, everybody's a hustler. The term hustler was not founded by William Ruto. It's been used by young people. Some people even have their business called My Hustle. They even what I call Co-Hustle, which is a software company that is working on how to digitize things. He's used the brand of organizations and then got into fame, and they got nothing. So according to me, the leadership that we are talking about, if I was president today, and I call all the CSS and the people and tell them, excuse me, I don't want anybody to make for me money. If you make money through corruption, you're on your own. That corruption will die just like a balloon that has been pricked. Corruption begins and ends with the leader. Let's just talk about it this way. Singapore, there was corruption, isn't it? Somebody came and began from Kim Wan-yung, right from the top. Tell me any country where citizens have come from below. Corruption cannot be fought bottom up. It must be fought top down. But we have a president who is believing on bottom up. So if he believes that corruption will be fought from bottom up, it won't work. It starts with him and ends with him. And I can tell you, the time when we saw Mwai Kibaki, we saw Moi, we saw Uhuru Kenyatta, each and every leader determined how much money was lost in corruption. And I can tell you, what the amount of corruption that is in this government has never been that amount. Because let's go to Mandaus, because an economist, I like numbers. William Ruto has collected total of 3.7 trillion shillings since he became president. He's borrowed 1.6 trillion shillings since he became president. That is 5.3 trillion shillings. What is he doing with the money? There is no SGR, there is no expressway, there is no thicker highway. If you combine those three big projects, there are something staggering 500 billion shillings. Do you tell me what can you do with 5.3 trillion shillings when there is no infrastructure projects? All have been suspended. For example, Mtito and Day, Voi Road was earmarked for upgrading. It's been suspended. Come to Hayagaki, as you head toward Naivasha, that road is terrible. It's been suspended. Everything has been suspended. Subsidies have been removed. Education has been defunded. For example, capitation has moved from 22,000 shillings during Uhuru to 12,000 during Ruto. If you go to agriculture, everything is falling. Let's go. Foreign policy. There's no foreign policy because anybody can travel and can say anything about any country. Look at the Murkomens, look at all of them. He can travel to any country, sometimes meet a fertilizer minister, which according to the Kenyan policy, a president cannot be welcomed by a minister for fertilizer. A president must be welcomed by somebody of a certain caliber. You come to domestic policy, fiscal policy, we have a tax policy that you can't predict. Someone wakes up today and you realize your pay slip has gone down by 10,000. If you earn 200,000, today it is 200,000, you budget with it, you look, then tomorrow you are budgeting with 160, then you go to 120. So there's no fiscal policy that is actually governing us. Very unstable. You come to the issue of education policy. Look at what is happening in the education sector. Look at the way it has been defunded. You come to the sector which is called security policy. I meet so many army generals because by teaching, I taught them when I was in Strathmore at a very high level. And now some of them are they told me, Professor, promotion, demotion, rewarding in the security agencies, there is no security policy, and they are very concerned in the military. And his guy called Dwale, they promote people based on things which are not meant with military. So there is no security policy. A country just operating with zero policy, and the policy becoming William Ruto is a dictator.
Thank you.
I have always said that the policy should be done by the ministers, not by the president. The president gives executive orders. But if the president becomes the policy and everything, it becomes a very serious issue.
Thank you.
And I think that as far as I'm concerned, me, I'm not giving up Churchill. Dr. Martin, I'm not giving up. Kira, I'm not giving up. The president can even have a chance of not seeing 2027. Forget about even the Kalenjins voting for him. They may have no chance to vote for him. And I believe that if Kenyans come together, they can stop him, because this is stoppable. And I believe that if you look at I was in Nakuru, everybody is not happy. I was in Tata Taveta, I was in Kilifi, I was in Malindi, I was in Eldoret. Everybody is not happy. The only person happy, I've told you, is someone receiving a direct check from him.
Thank you. All right. Who are these incompetent leaders that the president is talking about? Because he is the one who appoints some of his leaders as well.
You know, you're talking about...
when you talk...
You're talking about somebody who has been around as a member of parliament, not for 5 years, not for 10 years. For more than 30 years, he's been in our politics. You're talking about somebody who has been an assistant minister. You're talking about somebody who has been a minister. You're talking about somebody who has been in opposition. You're talking about somebody who has been in deputy president of a country and somebody who is the president of a country. What data is he giving you when he makes those statements? He says that and says Kenya has lagged behind because it was at the same point at the independence with Malaysia and with whoever in this room here can ever grow by comparing themselves that I want to be like Kiro. Kiro has been in the parliament 4 times. He is a pensioner. I am not. He can only be him. Kenya is just what it is because it cannot be Malaysia. It cannot be Singapore. Even if you borrow and try to... What has helped Malaysians work are 2 things, or those tigers: discipline, a culture of accountability. Now you are busy accusing the other arm of government, the judiciary, of corruption. You are not telling us anything about corruption in the executive. You are not telling us anything about corruption in the legislature. At some point you say, yeah, when I talk about corruption, it's about all arms of government. But there is a difference between talk and action. We have seen, and there are cases of corruption that are collapsing. When the Aror Dam case started, they said 21 million. William Ruto then was on record saying it was not 21 billion, it was 7 billion. So was that 7 billion stolen or not? And whether it was 21 or 7, how come the case is collapsing? In other words, we cannot be going anywhere with what we are saying as long as it is just talk. If it's corruption, the last person who should talk about anything should be the president. Why? Because he has the machinery to let things happen. So, you know that Honorable Kiro has acted in a manner that's corrupt. You will know because anti-corruption have told you, DCI have told you, the investigations have been done, and because he's a high-profile fellow, you have even been briefed, you've been told, we're about to take 1, 2, 3 people to court. That's okay. Don't even talk about it. Let the machine roll. Let it be that they are facing justice. They are facing the what they say, the long hand of the law. Let them face the process. To the extent that when they are done, they will know that it was about themselves, not about somebody else. The problem I have with the president is this. He knows how the judiciary is acted upon where a corruption or where an incident of misbehavior is reported. That process starts with the president, because the petition that comes from JSC goes to him, he forms the tribunal, and then he appoints the members, and then they report back to him. So when you have already said there is corruption, and then you are the judge, the Bal, who is being accused of corruption, he's setting up a tribunal. Why would you submit yourself to that tribunal when you know that he has already made up his mind? The next thing you'll do is go to court, because you don't believe that what he's about to do is right. So what we are saying is that when you make such statements, you undermine the rule of law and you undermine your own legitimacy, because how then will you be legitimate when you decide that, yes, I want to appoint a tribunal for Justice Dibal? Because then Dibal will start by saying, but you already have judged, you already said we are all corrupt, so how can I face my day of fairness in court? Chances are I'm not likely to. So what we are saying is that at that high level, at the presidential level, unless the president is playing politics and playing what we are saying is Machiavellian deception and manipulation, he should not be saying things that he cannot support or things that he should be asking for action. The other day we were seeing Kamata Kamata. Not that Kamata Kamata was a good thing, but at least it was saying something has happened. Whether what transpired later on was not correct or was not good, but the action was happening by the right organs. So we're not walking around political rallies vilifying institutions. The worst of it is when you undermine the institutions and you say you want to disobey the law and the court orders. Why do you expect Kenyans to obey you? Why do you expect me, as an ordinary person, to respect you? So we are fomenting lawlessness from the highest office, and that should not be. We expect the president to inspire confidence, to inspire order, and to bring us all into a culture of discipline and respect for the rule of law.
Right, and the highest office should not be the spawning ground for fomenting lawlessness. We want just to focus on the government, also on the issue of debt management, where government ministries have been urged to implement task force recommendations aimed at maximizing benefits. If may just roll up the audio for me so we continue this story on the debt management as well, where the CS is speaking. Recommendations aimed at maximizing benefits is there anyone on the audio? Right. To maximize benefits to the citizens. This is according to Cabinet Secretary for Performance and Service Delivery, Moses Kuria, during the preparation of a forthcoming State Ministers Conference. Kuria added that the move will help the state to avoid duplication and wastage of resources, thereby promoting development.
The inflation that is happening in the United States, the rising interest rates, you will recall that when this government came to office, the basic rate in the U.S., the treasury rate, was in the region of 0.5%. It has gone up tenfold to 5.5%. If the Kenyan interest rate would have gone up corresponding to the U.S. rate, right now we could have seen interest rates of up to 100%. We are finding that some of our neighbors, some of the countries in Africa, 3 countries in 3 years have defaulted on their debt obligations. And it is fulfilling to know that despite that prevailing circumstances, Kenya has avoided that trap, and we are currently current on our international debt obligation in terms of our servicing, and there is absolutely no possibility that the Ruto government is going to default on our international debt obligations.
All right, we just want to juxtapose that particular issue of debt management, and especially also looking at what we have on the front page of the Business Daily today, where U.S. firms enjoying billions in saving from Ruto tax cut. If we may just look at the business, we have Ormat ATC disclosing benefit from 30% corporate tax. Report came amid backlash over new taxes locally. And if we may remember, also we had the corporate tax being pared down globally, and I think this was also being steamrolled by the US. And also we had the president himself, Joe Biden, calling on Congress, this was last, to impose a 25% minimum tax on billionaires as part of a series of proposed tax hikes on wealthy individuals and corporations, according to a U.S. media report. Biden's proposed spending plan will also nearly double the capital gain tax for investment from 20% to 39.6% on income and lift income levies on corporation and wealthy Americans. Bloomberg News reported that was last year. Just looking at this, when we have, of course, this is an incentive for trying to woo in foreign direct investment, and according to the Ernst & Young report as well, on Africa Investment Attractive reports, Kenya also seems to be going up the ladder, as it were, following South Africa, Egypt, Morocco, or in that order as well. But when we have corporate tax, I don't know if this tax holidays is for a given time, and we're struggling to actually rope in or up the ante as far as revenue collection is concerned. What will be you making? Let me just hear from Churchill Suba.
Your question relates to, I was reading the Constitution.
Yeah, that's why in class you should actually be concentrating on what the teacher is saying. You cannot be reading the Constitution. So you'll pick up from where now. Let me begin with Kibrita Rapkirwa. I will not repeat the question.
Okay. No, it is very simple, Dibal, that economic environment must be seen in totality. You cannot isolate certain areas and expect that will be a booming part of the economy when some of the areas are not properly taken care of. The best thing to do it, and if we were to use a model that he professes to believe in, would have been, what are you doing with the people at the bottom, and what is the ripple effect to those who are slightly above them, and what is the interface between the macroeconomic challenges and the microeconomic challenges, in a way that one aspect feeds into the other. What do I have in mind? As Kenya was talking about tax, the UK budget was talking about relief of taxes to allow the economy to be stimulated for purposes of growth. Because tax, yes, is good because government does not do a lot of business. Its business is to collect taxes, and its business is also to utilize the same taxes for the benefit of the nation. But you cannot just tax without thinking on how are you improving your own internal economies. And the second question that you should be asking yourself, what is the component of this aspect of the economy contributing to the overall economy? For example, the agriculture sector is still directly and indirectly contributing close to 50% of our economic growth. And therefore, when you make the agriculture sector suffer, you are effectively deflating the economic growth of the nation. And for example, the tax on crops is about 14 billion. With a bit of switching off some of the pilferage areas, you can get that 14 billion without even taxing the farmer. And a tax has a certain ripple effect. Perhaps Professor will be able to assist me. When you hear the word tax, people associate tax with punitive measure. And therefore, if you do not present your taxation measures in a way that people find it friendly, they run away from you. For example, Kibaki reduced VAT from 18 to 16, and we collected more in terms of revenue than the previous year and many other years before. I heard somebody in government, I think it is the president, saying Kibaki increased taxes 4 times. I think the president should be assisted to understand the difference between tax and revenue. Because you can increase revenue collection, but not by increasing taxes. Kibaki never increased the taxes, increased revenue that was being gathered into the kitty for purposes of national development. So these are some of the issues that I feel either the president does not have time, capacity, the willingness to listen to the professionals. Because I assure you, Dibal, this government has a lot of professionals what they need to be done, what needs to be done is for them to be provided with effective leadership by listening to them and implementing what is within the ambit of the technical staff in various ministries.
Mm-hmm. Well, when we have this tax rebates or tax holidays for the U.S. firms as well, and we know their particular interests, especially in the renewable energy sector, where they've invested also heavily at the end of the day. And we know where the world is gravitating to when it comes to environment or economic social governance as well. What do you pretend? Because I think when we have a 30% tax holiday, it's a huge, in terms of revenue that they collect, is a huge sort of a break for these U.S. firms. Unless we have, maybe, I'm not really maybe adequately, sufficiently informed when the tax holidays are deemed to maybe have a sunset or a deadline. You can tell us now that you've consulted the Constitution.
Yeah, you know, it's good that you provided this Constitution, and I don't think they were just ornamental. They are meant for reference. But what
You're making a good use of it.
I'm making good use of the Constitution. Lawyers like him,
you can consult.
Lawyers like him say they have it offhand, and that's why they claim to be learned friends.
And the law is still not very clear.
And the law is never clear.
The law is very clear. The law is very clear.
But the point I want to make, Dibal, you know, when President Ruto took over the reins of government, he used to liken himself. I no longer hear him likening himself to Kibaki. But I remember when Kibaki took over from, national coffers that were in the intensive care unit. I think the deputy president likes likening it to a patient in ICU. He did certain things. And the economic stimulus programs, that incentivized people to make money, to generate resources. I remember even the culture of fish farming that has today taken root in parts of Kirinyaga, in parts of Nyeri. A lot of the fish we eat from the city market actually comes from central Kenya. And that was started by the former president, the late Mwai Kibaki. He also, reduced taxes so that Kenyans could have more money to produce more. Now, despite claiming to be, on economics is better than the opposition and so on, the opposition can continue telling stories and history. Ruto seems to think that the only way of growing the economy, because he was also quiet on this thing of growing the economy, is to continue taxing Kenyans even if they are not generating any revenue. And that for me is the paradox. And I wonder who he listens to. Of course, I've seen his policies win the praises of IMF and World Bank. I've never understood, I've never known any country that has ever developed
because
it
was affirmed by
the World Bank and IMF. All these ideas of selling parastatals, it's not different from the structural adjustment programs.
Yeah, it is.
That led to massive layoffs. So when the president says he's creating jobs because of a handful of people who have been employed in project sites and so on, yet he wants to sell KICC. His Excellency has even forgotten that he was a senior KANU stalwart when KICC was a property of the Kenya African National Union. What would he have sold? Had we, I remember leading a group, a very rowdy group, to chase away, some of the occupants of KICC. And we took it over. Today, one of the people was chased away from KICC. And all these people in Kenya Kwanza, have a history in KANU. They were all stuck there. Yesterday we saw in one of the pictures in one of the dailies, Moi being led to KICC for a neck, a KANU neck meeting and so on. So today, His Excellency has forgotten that he and his group, KANU group, that are today in Kenya Kwanza, had to be uprooted from KICC. Today he wants to sell it. Today he wants to sell new KICC. Yet, the other day he was blaming the former president for having monopoly. But on matters debt, the reason why I was reading the constitution...
Before you go to the debt, I think you raised... I wanted to also just query on the issue of the KICC, and it was in my mind to... Not KICC, but KCC, because we have the government or the president himself also directing that we have 5 billion shillings to be set aside for modernization of KCC factories across the country to boost capacity and enhance quality. This is said during his Nyahururu visit. The question is then, why would you be setting aside that 5 billion shillings?
And you want to sell it.
And you want to sell it.
Exactly. Martin, can you weigh in?
Let me weigh in. You see, the problem with the president of Kenya, President William Ruto, he's consistent about one thing: inconsistency. Because, you see, if you really want to fix an economy, and we have a man who arrived in Argentina the other day in December, the first thing he did is reduce the size of government.
Yeah.
And he said, and he's an economist, he said, I'm reducing the size of government. When you find a place in debt the way we are in debt, the first thing you do is reduce continuous bleeding, hemorrhage, and expenditure. Not increase taxes. You reduce, you shrink government, you control government. You don't appoint 50 CS, CAS, you don't appoint, I don't know how many CSS. You don't appoint, you don't blot.
And you don't renovate state house almost on a daily basis.
No, fine. And you don't travel all over the place. At a personal level, the moment you are in a challenge, you cut back on things. You do not increase on things that will pain your family. So basically what we see from him is the opposite of what we need. When he says he wants to sell public assets, it would appear that that is a saving. But in the same way, he's saying he wants to again invest back in those public assets. In other words, that you fatten a cow for yourself and then you want to sell it again using the same reason that it's expensive for you. So basically what we should be asking, and maybe we should be continuously focusing on, is to what extent are these inconsistencies going to help this country? When the president compares himself to Kibaki, he misses the point. Kibaki had a very seasoned team of people that he worked with, technocrats, and they came up with the economic recovery strategy paper. That paper built up for Vision 2030. He created a roadmap. When you go to Thika Road is in, it was part of that, and there were other infrastructure that were anticipated in Vision 2030. These bottom-up guys, what template are they following? We have said they've been in power for going to 2 years very soon. What one infrastructure, what one thing have they done, or are they intending to do? How are they intending to achieve their program? And one of the things we would have said is that even if they didn't do anything, let them sit back, cut back the expenditure, manage the economy, and give incentives for the economy to begin to come up. The truth of the matter is that the more you continue to tax people, the more you continue to tell even farmers to pay you, the more you walk into Kirua's home to count how many cows he has, and you want to insist that each cow, he must pay tax for that. You bring poll tax, you bring whatnot. That is the surest way of killing an economy, disincentivizing farmers and business people, and you create incentives for tax avoidance rather than for tax compliance. So really what they're doing is going to achieve the very opposite of what they would want to see.
Right, we do for a station break, and I just wanted also to just raise something alongside that when we're talking about the public debt and the management of it, because also Treasury 6.2, as we can see here before I take a short break right now, on the front page of the Business Daily on Tuesday, where the government is seeking to raise borrowing. This is Treasury. Still, we're talking about debt management and how to clamp it. But the Treasury raises borrowing target by 168 billion shillings. The government has raised its